In the most recent stat post from BHVR, they randomly showed off actual MMR for the first time ever. In the past, any time one of these stats were shared, they always used ambiguous language like all MMR, high MMR, or top 5% of MMR, something like that. However, this time they just straight up used 500 MMR and 1800 MMR, and surprisingly this went completely unnoticed by the DBD community. That's probably mainly due to the fact that channels like mine have been showing these data mine stats for years, so it really didn't stand out all that much. That said, I really don't believe that BHVR would do something this major unless it meant something. Maybe they wanted to dip their toe into public MMR numbers and see how the community would react, and fortunately, since this went mostly unnoticed, it was overall a pretty healthy reaction and put a bit of a muzzle on the if MMR goes public, it'll ruin the game doomsdayer crowd. So the big question is MMR going to become public? We do know that in the Operation Health update, MMR is getting some kind of unknown update, so that's a fact. Now, if you were like me, you probably assume that BHVR would never make MMR public in 1,000 years, right? And a few months back, I would have died on that hill. But as some of you may know, earlier this year, I found out that we could actually legally request our own private MMR data from BHVR, and they would have to send it to us. And that video got over 40,000 views. In addition, most content creators I know requested their MMR data and also told their communities about it as well. So it's safely fair to assume that at least 10,000 or more people sent in data requests to get their private MMR from BHVR. Now, unfortunately, they ended up turning this into a weird thing where BHVR got their legal team involved to hide MMR by claiming it was a trade secret, like they developed some super hyper intelligent system that they needed to protect from their competitors. But since I already received my MMR data, it was already easy to see that they actually just copied a slightly modified version of a widely used MMR system designed specifically for chess. So the point I'm trying to make is that it could possibly be that a giant wave of 10,000 or more data requests that all need to be individually handled by the support staff may have either led to a situation where hiding MMR is now becoming more trouble than it's worth. Don't forget, players can do up to 2 data requests in a 12-month period, so these requests could still be piling up for all we know. So that's scenario number 1. It's just becoming too annoying to try to keep it hidden anymore, and it's not worth it. Scenario 2 is that BHVR saw how many people wanted to see their own MMR, and it genuinely made them decide to make it public. Obviously, this is all speculation, but both of these scenarios seem very possible. Now, the reason or reasons I always felt that MMR was hidden in the first place is because there's a lot of benefits to it for BHVR as a company. The more ambiguous the system is, the more control BHVR has over balance narratives. Retention analysis are going to always see that when players think they're better at a game than they actually are, it keeps them playing longer, they feel more dedicated to it. It's why they revamped the grade system into a self-glazing machine and added 100 prestige levels and all of that. Hiding MMR also decreases elitism from high MMR players and toxicity in general, right? Or so is the hypothesis. So again, why would BHVR backstep on this if it might cause issues with toxicity and elitism and all of that? Well, let's address each issue one by one. First, hiding prestiges. BHVR not too long ago hid the ability to see what prestige a survivor was until the end game screen. The reason they did this though was to stop killers from dodging lobbies with P100 survivors. So we know that if MMR was ever added, it would not show anyone's MMR in the pre-game lobby. That would be really dumb to do. However, not showing MMR in the post-game screen would also be pretty dumb in my opinion. To judge the effectiveness of the system and evaluate our own skill, we need to know the numbers of the players we play against, or it doesn't really mean that much because people will just claim you played against low MMR players every time you win, or vice versa. That said, knowing BHVR, they probably won't do this. I'm sure they're scared it would lead to toxicity in the endgame chat, and again, keeping it somewhat ambiguous still helps them. Moving on, they also removed grades from the endgame screen because newer players never were able to understand that grades had nothing to do with skill and were just a reflection of how much someone had played in the past month, literally nothing else.
They get kills when they're looping and they have 3 lives. It's insane. GG. How the f is that GG? They're all max rank! What the f? They're all the best rank in the game.
That means if they add public MMR, I'm assuming it will only show you your own MMR. And that's still 100% preferable to hiding it. It does still give us good information. It's just not as good as it could be if it also showed the MMR of the players you played against in the endgame screen. Also, if they do add public MMR, I hope they add it to the beta option in settings and allow us to opt into it if we want to and have it turned off by default. There's just a huge chunk of the community that does not want to see their own MMR. A lot of players understandably find it very stressful and off-putting to constantly see their rank drop. Like in any other ranked playlist in any other game, if you constantly see yourself de-ranking, it just makes you want to play something else, right? So in my opinion, they shouldn't be subjected to it if they don't want to, especially if they're one of the few people out there that just play DBD for casual fun. Now, the last major point of contention for a public MMR system is elitism, toxicity, and the fear that non-high MMR players, or let's call them low MMR players, which are the majority of the player base, will no longer have a voice when it comes to balance or anything like that. So starting with toxicity, I don't believe at all that public MMR will lead to increased toxicity. Toxic people are always going to be toxic, so in the end it doesn't really matter if MMR is public or not. The only difference is that they have a new tool to be toxic with, but it doesn't actually increase the amount. Also, some toxic players might even realize their opinions on the game are not as solid as they once believed if it turns out that their own MMR is much lower than they assumed, right? So increased toxicity is a feeble argument in my opinion. Now, when it comes to low MMR players no longer having a voice when it comes to balance, I understand that concern. That said, the feedback of what casual players say will always be incredibly important, way more so than the top 5% of full poopy diapers out there like me. However, the most important aspect of hearing casual player feedback is to decipher what they're really trying to say, but never actually implement their suggested solutions to the problems they're having, because they just don't have a full understanding of the game, and in a lot, if not most cases, their proposed balance changes would not only destroy the game, but wouldn't even solve the specific issue that they're having. So ideally, public MMR would help out there as well, and I'll make an entire video on this subject soon to show you exactly what I mean when I say you listen to their feedback, but you do not implement their solutions, because they are usually terrible. But that's it. I think this was a pretty reasonable take on adding public MMR to the game. If done correctly, there's a lot more benefits to it than hiding it, and I hope it happens so we can finally be done with this entire topic. Otherwise, maybe a bunch of new Five Nights at Freddy players will request their data from BHVR as well. Who knows? All that said, let me know how you feel about MMR becoming public, and as always, thanks so much for watching and have a good one.